Let's continue our story. When King Herod ordered the arrest of John the Baptist, Jesus was not in Jerusalem. Because of this, he narrowly escaped danger. At that time, Jesus was about 30 years old and was preaching throughout the region of Galilee with his 12 disciples. Before we go further, we should make one thing clear. Jesus himself was a circumcised Jew who strictly followed Jewish law and the teachings of the Scriptures throughout his life. By birth and by faith, he was a devout and orthodox Jew. However, when Jesus began preaching in his hometown of Nazareth, things did not go well. The people there did not believe him. Some even wanted to kill him. So Jesus left his hometown and went to the region around the Sea of Galilee. From then on, his ministry began to flourish, and he gathered 12 disciples. According to the Bible, this success was closely related to the many miracles he performed. For example, the famous painting The Wedding at Cana, now housed in the Louvre, depicts Jesus performing his first miracle. At that time, he attended a wedding with his mother, Mary. When the hosts ran out of wine, Mary asked Jesus to help. He told the servants to fill the jars with water and then serve it to the guests. To everyone's astonishment, the water had turned into fine wine. This was the first miracle Jesus performed. Later, he healed people born blind by placing mud mixed with his own saliva on their eyes and telling them to wash it off, and they could see again. He also used 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish to feed more than 5,000 people who had come to hear him preach. This is the famous story of the feeding of the 5,000. Even more astonishingly, he raised a man who had been dead for 4 days back to life. All of these miracles are recorded in the New Testament Gospels. But today, our focus is not on his miracles. Instead, we will talk about how Jesus preached in Jerusalem and how he ultimately met his death there. Jesus soon became famous throughout the land. One day, he told his disciples, "I am going to Jerusalem. There I will be killed. But after 3 days, I will rise again." The disciples were confused, for Jesus often spoke words they could not understand. It was the time of the Jewish Passover, a festival when people from all over came to the temple to worship. Jesus and his disciples also set out for Jerusalem. He entered the city, riding on a young donkey, and crowds came out to welcome him. They spread their cloaks and palm branches on the road, shouting, "Hosanna!" and hailed him as their king. As Jesus looked down upon the golden city of Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives, he suddenly wept. The disciples asked, "Master, why are you crying?" Jesus replied, "I see the city surrounded by armies. Its people will suffer terribly, and not one stone will be left upon another." Today, a tear-shaped chapel called Dominus Flevit, meaning the Lord wept, stands on the Mount of Olives to commemorate the tears Jesus shed for Jerusalem. When Jesus entered the Temple Mount, he saw merchants and money changers filling the holy place. Angrily, he took a whip and drove them out, crying, "You have turned my Father's house into a den of thieves." This caused an uproar. People asked, "Who is this man?" Someone answered, "He is the one who calls himself the Messiah, the King of the Jews." This immediately drew the attention of the Pharisees, the religious elite of that time. The next day, the Pharisees came to test him with a trap. They asked, "If you are the Son of God, tell us, is it lawful to pay taxes to Rome Jesus replied, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's." In other words, secular power belongs to the earthly realm, but faith and the soul belong to God. This saying would later inspire the concept of the separation of church and state. But Jesus continued to speak words that many found difficult to grasp. The kingdom of heaven is near. This temple will be destroyed, and in 3 days I will rebuild it. These words made the priests and nobles both fearful and angry. They decided he had to be eliminated. Soon after, Jesus was betrayed by one of his own disciples, Judas, for 30 pieces of silver. That night was the setting for Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. Jesus said to his disciples, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me." The disciples were shocked. The one holding the money bag, Judas, was the betrayer. Late that night, Judas led the temple guards and Roman soldiers to the Garden of Gethsemane. He approached Jesus and kissed him, and that kiss became the eternal symbol of betrayal. After his arrest, Jesus was brought before the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "You say so. My kingdom is not of this world." In truth, Jesus had committed no crime deserving death. He neither stirred rebellion nor used violence. He only preached faith. Yet the priests and nobles demanded his execution, accusing him of blasphemy. Pilate was caught in a dilemma. As was the custom during Passover, he offered to release one prisoner, either Jesus or Barabbas, a murderer. The crowd shouted, "Crucify Jesus! Release Barabbas!" Helpless, Pilate washed his hands before the people and said, "I am innocent of this man's blood." The crowd responded, "His blood be upon us and upon our children." Jesus was scourged, crowned with thorns, and forced to carry his heavy cross to the place of execution, Golgotha, meaning the place of the skull. He fell several times along the way, but remained silent. Under the burning sun, he was nailed to the cross. Nails driven through his hands and feet. He said, "I thirst." Someone lifted a sponge soaked in vinegar to his lips. Hours later, in unbearable agony, he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Then, with his final breath, he said, "It is finished," bowed his head, and died. After his death, Jesus was laid in a rock-hewn tomb. 3 days later, Mary Magdalene came to visit the tomb, only to find the stone rolled away and his body gone. 2 angels appeared and said, "Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here, he has risen." Just as he had foretold, later, Jesus appeared to his disciples. Thomas, who doubted, touched the wounds in his hands and side, and finally believed. Caravaggio's painting, The Incredulity of St. Thomas, vividly captures that moment. The crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus became the very heart of the Christian faith. Through his death, he was seen as having redeemed humanity from sin. Easter is celebrated to commemorate this miracle. However, from that time onward, the Jewish people never accepted Jesus as the Messiah. To them, he was a man from Nazareth who was condemned for his words. But to Christians, he was the Son of God, sent to the cross by his own people. And this theological divide would later sow the seeds of anti-Jewish sentiment in Christian history. Before his death, Jesus wept for Jerusalem and prophesied its destruction by foreign armies. Decades later, this prophecy came true. In the next episode, we will tell the story of how Christianity spread across the world after Jesus' death.